everyone, and welcome back to the Business of Business podcast, Two Daughters and Their Dad. I'm your host, Staci J. Dempsey, and like always, thankfully, I have the other daughter and the one and only Dad. Good morning to the both of you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of our listeners, no matter where you are listening in from. We have a really neat topic to talk about today. Thankfully, the other daughter, brought this fantastic topic to the podcast for all of our wonderful listeners, and that is what is maybe an option from getting to being maybe a home-based business to a brick and mortar business, and what could be the in between, because we've talked about before, different ways of negotiating with landlords and leases, and um, finding resources, and how to approach the bank, and really taking what would be necessary to take that big first leap. But what if there could be like a little baby leap in the middle of that? What if there could be something else? What if there could be another creative way, to say, hey, I'm having some success in my home-based business. This can expand, but listen, rent out here for a commercial space, it's maybe a little or a lot different than what it was a year ago or 2 years ago, and so it's maybe just that much more intimidating. So Jennifer, why don't you start us off and share with our listeners this amazing, wonderful, fabulous, absolutely mind-blowing topic that you've brought to the podcast today.
Me now. But I was excited to bring this topic because this is like real life conversation inside of the salon, and where we live in our community, I've seen this just starting to happen, and I think it is genius with some caution. So I had a client in the salon talking about how she makes dips out of her house, and how it is so successful, and she's looking to take it to the next level. And I was thinking about another business in our community where there's two businesses that share one space, meaning they get to share all the expenses, all the overhead inside of that space. And I had just recently seen that, when the business came in and said, hey, we're doing a pop-up shop, we're going to see if this works. Well, it has been successful, and they're looking for a new space. So there's a coffee shop and like a wing food eatery place. And the pop-up shop was the wings. So they have obviously been very successful in our community. And now they're going to move a few doors down in the strip mall and have their own space. So I knew that there was space becoming available. So I was telling this client, instead of kind of going 0 to 100 from working out of your house to like going to get your own storefront, which can be very intimidating, very hard, why not see if you can get plugged in with this business that is already established? I know they have somewhat of a small kitchen. And so I thought it would just be a great fit. And we've seen this, in other areas of our community where two businesses maybe have their own space and for whatever reason has partnered together and went into one space. So I wanted to bring it to the podcast and see what you guys thought about it, because what I do know, because I've done it, I've started a business from nothing, is that when I first wanted to open my salon, I couldn't do anything under my name because I've never had a business before. I didn't have any financial backing in my name. So I could not get a lease just on my own. I couldn't even open a bank account or a credit card under my name. I had to have Dad's signature on all of my things. So it was a very wonderful experience to then be like, sorry, Dad, I don't need your signature anymore. But some people don't have that, right? And some people don't realize that. I mean, I was 26 years old. Like, I will sign my name in blood. Just give me a lease. I will do whatever it takes. But, there obviously are certain things that you have to have and certain things that you have to do to be able to get into a storefront like that. And if you don't already have an established business showing profit or simply showing cash money in the bank, Most landlords are not going to give you that opportunity. So I think that this is just a great stepping stone for a lot of businesses. Or we talk about this before, Dad, where your first location might be doing fabulous and amazing, and you're looking to branch off and go into a different state or town or community. And so you can use this kind of like pop-up shop idea to get started without putting all your eggs in one basket and just going full force after it.
Yeah, it really gives a in the story that Jennifer was telling, it really gave kind of an eye opener of, you know, number one being creative, but number two also just purely networking. Like, hey, saying, hey, you already have a business. I'm sure, another business coming in, they're complementary to each other. They're also not in direct competition with one another. And so, in the example that Jennifer gave, I think what's really interesting about their arrangement is that, um, you know, one business opens early. The second business does, people go in, they get coffee in the morning, and they see, oh, hey, you know what? I can come back here and get dinner or get lunch. I didn't know this was, but that second business isn't open yet. And then when the coffee shop closes, that's when, the lunch and dinner place opens up. But, I think it shows that, businesses can be complementary, not in direct competition with one another, but also can be, you know, on the business side of it, be helping each other, sharing space, and having, the same foot traffic come in, same parking spots open up at different times for people to have easy access to that. And for someone that maybe has had some level of success in their home business, or a lot of businesses now are saying, hey, they have a full schedule of, hey, these are all the places I'm going to be that you can come see me. That could also be another option before we do the jump of, maybe, brick and mortar and signing a lease or buying a building, is having a full schedule of, here's all the places I'm going to be if you want to see me. And that is also, in the same example that Jennifer gave, it's a great way to start building a community of people, so that when you do have the opportunity to have a brick and mortar, you already have the community coming, and they're just even that much more excited to have a place to come, and actually they know that this is your space because they've kind of been along the ride with you. So because let's face it, it's never easy to start a business or run a business, but it's definitely a little bit more intimidating now, um, than ever, to get to that kind of brick and mortar space.
I mean, I think that, again, I love the creativity that, this brings to entrepreneurship and thinking outside the box. And, the, and in today's world, I mean, we've talked about this before. There's many aspects of entrepreneurship that has gotten much easier, and much more cost effective, especially in around the time, around marketing and, because of technology. You don't have to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in marketing or more, to market your service or your product. Technology has really driven that cost down. But, the one big thing out there still is, if your business is one that needs, to have that, or should get that public exposure, the ability to, have people come in, whether, no matter what type of business it is, now it's all right. How do we, how do we make that leap into the real estate aspect of this? And that certainly can be expensive, and not easy. So I really like the thought around how this, could be another option for entrepreneurs on how to get their business, out into, the main street, so to speak, and get that exposure. Um, but I think that, one of the keys, and you've said it, we've said it a couple of times, it does need to be complementary to each other. They can't maybe be or shouldn't be too diverse, I don't think, unless there was a clear, unless the space really allowed for that to be a clear, cutoff or, you know, difference between what people are looking at, that it just doesn't look weird, that you walk into one space that's open and, and you just have something that are two different types of businesses that aren't complementary. But I mean, if the space would allow it, I don't see a big problem. But again, not sure that, you know, that would still work real well from a landlord's perspective.
Right.
To them, they're still looking at renting maybe two separate spaces rather than one space being shared by two businesses. Um, but you know, but again, like I look at Jennifer's business, like Jennifer, what would be an example, like if you had the space, which you don't, because you're at capacity, but if you had space that you felt like you could do that, what would be maybe a complementary business or service that would fit with the hair studio?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably still fall under kind of that beauty industry umbrella. So, like a esthetician or a massage therapist or lashes, microblading is really popular right now. So something under probably the beauty umbrella. Believe me, because when this brought to me, I was like, I almost said you can make dip and sell it out my back door, and we can make just in the spirit of entrepreneurship because I wanted to help her so much. But I do agree. I think it has to be, but at the same time, you don't want it to be in competition with each other. I know in downtown Swedesboro, we had two different businesses already established. One business making mixers, and that started out of her house, and then the other one is like a macaroon shop, and they were in two different buildings for a while, and then that relationship happened, and they ended up leaving those locations and going into one space. So I agree. I don't think it's for everyone. Like, I don't think I could necessarily share a space because just I don't have that much space to share. But I do think it is really, in these examples that we're giving, when you're talking about kind of that pop-up shop, there's nothing wrong with trying something, right? Just how can we try something, try a business without going 100% in? I think there's some respect to that, and I think that this is a great avenue for that. But it's important to understand what's going on because I see a lot on social media in our community, like there is nothing for rent, right? If you're trying to get into the area that we're in, there's not a ton of real estate available to lease. So I think it's good to share your ideas, share what you want to do because, especially when you're starting out, you don't have all the answers. So you never know what one conversation, putting it out there what opportunities can come from that to say, hey, maybe we can join forces here. Maybe there's something that we can do to kind of start to elevate that business to the next level. And I think we're going to see more and more of it. I really do. I think it's, you know, I don't know why this is so in my face right now. I don't necessarily remember seeing this before, but I think as we move obviously into more and more entrepreneurship, people wanting to kind of own their own business, we're going to see this happen more and more. And there's always going to be pros and cons because I don't know if you remember, Stace, when there was a coffee shop and when the wing place went in, people were very confused. The community was confused. So I'm trying to really
Yeah.
think to myself, when I put my logo on the building, it's very clear it's a hair salon. But once you put two logos on the building, people were confused. And obviously in the hair salon, we talk all day, every day. So I'm like, did you hear about the new food spot? It's so good. Me and my sister were just there. They're like, where? What? So I think that it can also be confusing. So marketing, communication has to really be top notch to get that message out to the community too.
Well, and also for, and we've talked before about, location is key.
Yeah.
For a business that has been operating specifically out of their home, not like in Tollman Brothers, they said, "Well, we want to make sure you guys are going to actually show up. Like, we want to make sure we're going to have a community here.
Yeah.
So, um we want to be here, but you guys, I mean, I remember seeing the social media posts like, but you got to show us the love." So for someone that's like, I don't really know where the right place is for my business to land, you know, going down this road of maybe finding some places that you can kind of have this same example and, you know, still do your business out of your home, but then let me go over here, if there's some place that I can kind of set up for 6 months or a year, see how that goes, or just to kind of feel it out a little bit. Because in the examples we're giving, these are businesses that are leasing from a landlord, but there are businesses that they own their building, that they don't have to go and talk to somebody else. You can make an arrangement with someone to say, hey, you're going to have to do some due diligence and some research, but those spaces are out there. And I think,
Oopsie daisy.
what's that?
Oh,
Oopsie
you
daisy.
froze there for a second.
Oh, did
Yeah.
I? Oh,
Yeah, you're
are you
good.
froze too, Jen?
No, I'm
Jennifer's
here.
frozen. Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm
um
okay.
there, you're here, I got you. But what I was going to say was that, I think the opportunity in it is that if I'm an established business and someone even comes to me with an idea to say, hey, listen, here's my idea about kind of maybe sharing your space, I'm just going to be intrigued to listen, because this new person is potentially going to bring more people and new people to my already established business.
Sure.
So, so I think that it's obviously that's mutually beneficial, but I think more and more places that specifically own their brick and mortar are really going to be open to the idea, especially if they have the space. Because a lot of our brick and mortar buildings, especially since COVID, where some places are working from home, and you know, there there are spaces available. It's just being creative. And what I like about the mocktails and the macaroon um, business is that they were individually in their own spaces in a very desirable location in a very desirable town. So they didn't want to give up the fact that they were already there, but that rent was, I'm going to have to make a lot more macaroons to get this rent paid because it went up. I mean, really, that's from what I understand. Like, it's rent goes up 10%. That's a lot of money over a year. Um, but again, they didn't want to give up their desirable location, the desirable town, because if they did, and they didn't, they weren't going to get back in.
Yeah.
So, again, that creativity to say, let's kind of join forces here, alleviate some of the weight of, the expenses of the business, and, and again, be complementary to each other. So,
Well, it's funny that storefront opened up, and one day I drove by and I'm like, oh, they're moved out. I got to think about what business I'm going to put in there. And then the next time I drove by, it was a new business was already there. I'm like, well,
that's,
dang it, I like that spot and I wanted it for myself. So
I didn't know what
One of
I
the
was going to
things
put
that
in there, but
I don't.
things, again, as a, you know, going into it, everybody would certainly want to make sure they understand that, you know, the lease aspect of this, who's signing what and what you're signing and who's going to be responsible for what, should be something that, is very thought out, and make sure you're clear on, because again, if you're two businesses that you feel like, all right, let's just say that you're both coming into the fact that there's this desirable space, um, that, you know, one business doesn't need all of that, but you have two complementary businesses that would, fill the space and be complementary, Well, now, how do you go to a landlord and sell that, two different businesses in the same space? Who's going to be responsible on the lease if the other business fails?
Right.
Or, has to walk away from the lease. So again, just want to make sure that, you understand what all that looks like. Now, obviously, if it's an established business that, already has that track record, already, has the lease, then maybe a little bit less of a concern. But then the other component of that is whether the landlord, would still be on board with you subleasing part of that. And, so again, nothing here that's, there's no obstacles here that you can't overcome, but you have to understand, you want to make sure that there's aspect of this, because there's also making sure each business has the right type of insurance and liability and premise, in case there's a slip and fall. Who's going to, is it, if it's, who's going to get sued? Both businesses or one business? Is it the business that the client is, the customer is going to see? So there's just, some things you just want to make sure you understand, before you sign, anything like that. But again, I love the creativity. I love the innovation, around this. And, and again, it really is, maybe like we've said, that easier way to transition to, a business that has either been, done another way, maybe another space that wasn't so complementary to your business because of the location, or,
Yeah.
or you've been operating, out of your home. I mean, another thing that's out there too is there are spaces that they would call like incubator type of spaces, where it does allow you to, come into it with shared space with other businesses, to incubate your business and get it, off the ground, to then do something, more robust down the road. So those, I'm not familiar with any right off the top of my head, where they might be, but there are those places out there. And I know, especially in the food business, where you're not selling food for daily consumption, but maybe you're making things for sale, for retail. I know that there's places that have like commercial kitchens for, that you can just rent commercial kitchens space, where you share that, where you're in there for a period of time making your product, and, then, you exit after your allotted time, depending on what you're making. But again, it has all the commercial kitchen aspects. And usually those places even have then an associated retail component to it, where, attached to those is a place then you can even, sell your products, where people would come in, to shop. So, there's, I am familiar with some places like that that's out there, that's another way to, especially again, if you're making, baked goods, or, certain types of foods for retail selling, jellies, jams, just things like that. So, those can be an option.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, good stuff. I think that this was definitely a very fun topic to talk about, especially because um, Jennifer and I know of the businesses, and and as I think most people, when you kind of see a business go up in your community, and you do see that it's doing well, that's exciting. That's really, it's neat. And then to see kind of two businesses kind of teaming up together. Um, I don't know. Maybe we're nerds, but it's just, I don't know. I think it's fun. I think it's cool. So I think all of our listeners think it's cool too. So anyway, we hope that you have found this to be helpful and just as exciting as we have. And we'll see you guys in our next episode.